Today, I wanted to do kind of a basic quick guide on Asura. She's a really cool unit, and I kind of wanted to showcase it just in case you have her and you don't necessarily know what she does. So for her basic attacks, they all do fire damage. Pretty basic, pretty straightforward. Now, the cool thing is she can actually hold her attack. So if you hold her basic attack, it does this like piercing attack that also does fire damage. You have the ability to dodge. So whenever you do your dodge and you get 0 time, which is basically if you dodge perfectly, this will actually recharge your ultimate. And it also works if your teammates do it as well. So it's kind of a cool way to get your ultimate back a little bit quicker. Now, skill 1 is going to be pretty basic. Just kind of a flurry of attacks there. It hits pretty much everything in the vicinity. Skill 2 is where it gets really interesting because this is more like a control scenario. And she's like one of the only units that I've actually seen that can do this, because Poseidon can actually freeze. But basically what she does is she like time holds people there. So this person cannot move. And from what I've seen, it does work on the bosses in the actual story mode. I don't know if it works on like the giant bosses, but it's kind of a cool thing because you hold people in place. You can control battles really well. And it also does an AoE effect whenever like it kind of detonates. It does AoE around everybody. Now, skill 3 is going to be kind of this piercing thing that comes up out of the ground. The cool thing about that, though, is it actually pulls people in. So if you have a group of enemies that are in the vicinity of it, it'll pull everybody together, and then you can use skill 1 or 2 depending on what you want to do, and you can just do massive amount of damage. This is easy clearing for a lot of the story stuff. You pretty much pull everybody in right at the get-go, do a couple basics, or you hold your fire warp for your basic attack, or you can do any kind of skill and you just kind of eliminate everybody and move on to the next part. Now, this is where she gets really interesting, though. So anytime that she uses a skill, she goes into a different type of state, which is called Flame Flutterer. Hopefully I'm saying that name right. But what this will do is it'll enhance the fire warp. So fire warp is this hold down of a basic attack. It'll kind of evolve it. So the idea, though, is it'll actually tell us a little bit more in depth here when we look at this. So fire warp, hold down a normal attack button to cast this skill. She releases a linear attack through space, dealing fire damage equal to 200%, 220%, or a total percentage of attack in total. When she's in the Flame Flutterer state, though, the fire resistance of enemies hit is lowered by 15% for 4 seconds. Now, there's another condition here, basically. Each time that the Flame Flutterer state ends, the next cast of Flame Warp is enhanced. Hold down the normal attack button to cast a skill, kind of the same thing, but this one's actually going to do a way higher, almost double percentage of attack in total. So what this is basically meaning is if, for example, I use this, and then I, attack a little bit and I smack with my normal attack, and then I do it again, this next time is enhanced. So this one's going to do massive amount of damage. But that leads us into our skill. Our ultimate here is going to just do a massive amount of damage around, and it kind of has this like area effect as it sits around as well. That does a ton of damage to anything in the vicinity. So basically it does a huge total percentage of attack in total. Enemies have their fire resistance lowered by 30% for 10 seconds. A 15% ultimate charge is granted when Asura or a teammate triggers 0 time, which is basically the dodge there, perfect dodge. So you get it back relatively quickly, and that's just kind of like her bread and butter. So you can pretty much keep proccing these things like over and over. So if I use this skill and I smack, bam, 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 this whole entire time she's doing increased damage. Bam, I proc it again, bam, bam, bam. Like, it's just kind of like a never-ending thing. So basically, you just want to keep proccing your different skills. You can do different skills in different ways that you want to do it. Like I said, skill 3 is going to pull everybody together. Skill 2 is kind of this time stop thing where everybody in it gets frozen. And then skill 1 is kind of your more basic one where it just kind of hammers everything in the vicinity. But it's kind of cool because it does help out if you have like a fire team, for example. It does lower resistance to fire. So if you have a couple people on your team, or even one other person on your team that does fire damage, also help them with lowering the resistance based on just your normal attacks, as well as your ultimate here will also lower fire resistance as well. So if we're talking about teams for Asura here, we're going to be looking at the ultimate skill chains. Is a great place to start for any unit. Basically, this is the idea of the game saying, hey, these two paired well in some aspect. Now, do note that Zen is actually going to be a physical unit. So even though she does give a certain percentage of attack skill based on this ultimate, as well as Asura doing fire damage and reducing the fire resistance by 30% for 12 seconds, which is a crucial thing, again, because that's just another stack of fire resistance and another stack of just fire damage in general, that the Zen here is actually not going to be using too much of the fire resistance because she doesn't do fire damage. In that case, if you are pairing these two together, which again, Zen's kind of on the lower of the tier list, so she would really just be used for the ultimate there. I would say that you could also pair those two together with this guy, which he is a fire unit. He does quite a bit of fire damage, as you can see from just his like main skills and abilities. But the real thing we want to look at is his ultimate. So his ultimate grants everybody on the team overload for 10 seconds. Overload grants unyielding, meaning that you cannot get flinched, you cannot get pushed, you're just like unrelenting. You have super armor basically, and when the mod is hit, the attacker is dealt a fire percentage of damage in total. So he also just does a massive amount of damage, and then his skill comes back a little bit quicker whenever they're inflicted with Scorch, which is his mechanic that he's able to do as he kind of progresses with his different skills. So if you're looking for somebody that's kind of a nice UI or AI to jump on and just kind of help out with the overall team, he'd be a good pick. There are a couple S ranks like this guy, for example, who are fire based. So he does a ton of fire damage, but from what I've seen, he's kind of hard to use. A lot of people put him as AI, but I don't really recommend, if you have like an S selector at this point, that you'd really want to grab him. It would probably be Poseidon, which she's able to freeze people from what I've been able to see from her. So she'd be kind of a cool control group, especially because Asura has her skill too, which can do the kind of time freeze thing, and then she can actually like literally freeze them. So you have a little bit more control in the battlefield. And then she also has a little bit of a hybrid because I think she's wind, water, and fire. So she can be kind of like a situational scenario, and she does a massive amount of damage as well. If you just kind of want somebody on the AI, it'd be kind of shameful to use her as AI. But yeah, that's kind of the teams I would recommend for her. There's a couple of different units if you're just looking for like a DPS. Like for example, I have her on the team right now, and even though she's not helping a ton because she has physical damage, you know, she does DP. She does DPS, so she's able to just do a massive amount of damage. Oh yeah, you could also use the A rank Poseidon as well because she does healing. So if you just need a little extra boost in healing, or really any buffer, there's a couple of different units on here I think to do buffing, and somebody else. So there's kind of like that third slot that you can kind of fill with anybody, like a buffer or healer. Next up, talking about our sigils here, the game does a great job of recommending ones. Now there's two ways to kind of look at this. So for example, this red one right here does increase fire damage. So of course this is going to be good on her because we want the fire damage. And then this one as well has a chance to gain 35% max energy each time the energy is consumed. So it basically gives you energy back and has a good chance of giving you a little bit back every single time that you use it. Now there is a couple routes though that I will recommend. And also, by the way, if you're wondering kind of a cool way to not always have to go through here and like kind of match everything up, you can actually go to sets and it will tell you what's recommended. So if you have the recommended sigil, you can actually just click it from here. The sigils are actually going to be kind of in place with what she does for her codes. So this is kind of a different line of things that you can do with a character. So for example, in this case, if you go the blue route, this is basically going to give you that extra damage on the flame fetter, which is kind of her next state or her like boosted state. This is going to give you just more damage. I think this one actually extends the duration, and then this one here can give you a little bit of a stack. So this means it can stack each time during the duration extension up to 3 times. And if you look at the yellow path here, this just gives you a lot of energy back. So this is kind of a neat one because you can use this for ultimates, or you can actually look at this last one on the little skill tree here, and it actually gives you kind of an option to use your energy in a different way. So fire warp, which is your basic attack held, it will actually expend 50% of it. And for every 1 energy expended this way, damage increased for 2% for 12 or 6 seconds, and effect stacks up to 100 times. 100 times you can do this. So it's kind of a cool thing because you can actually use it for ultimates, or you can just decide to use it as like an amplifier basically for attack damage. And then the next one's going to be your crit path. So this is going to be the red path that just gives you a ton of crit, effect stacks 3 times. And it just gives you an idea of how to do a massive amount of crit, which leads me into kind of like the other recommendation for sigils. So it does tell you that you should go for fire, which is a nice idea. But anyway, you can just kind of go for any other thing that gives you like maybe an ultimate skill increase as well, if you're looking to do the energy route, or you can go into increased crit rate. So increased crit rate, I don't know which one of these are not necessarily the best one. Like this one, for example, you have to have modifying level omega, not necessarily worth it. But anything that gives you a little bit of a stack on an increase for crit rate, if you're going down that path, is definitely something to look at. Last thing I want to talk about is Functor. So this actually goes on to your weapon here, but it does things for your entire unit. So this one, for example, when dodge is triggered, it gets a shield equal to 4.2% of HP for 10 seconds. But you actually want to match up basically her little symbol here with the one in the summons. So if you're going to go in here and you're going to do summons, you want to match up with the one that you're looking for, right? And then on top of that, if you're looking for like a specific unit, go into awakened form, and this will tell you who's what and where, because it says bonus here. So basically this is her signature functor, and this does a ton of stuff. Like it's massive. It's almost game changing for the way that you actually play her, which is why I was saying there's a couple different routes that you can go on, especially with her Aether codes there, because this one pretty much instead of your flame flutterer actually enhancing fire a warp at the very beginning, it's the next use of fire warp is enhanced when the modifier enters. So every single time that you enter flame fetter, you get an enhanced fire warp. So instead of having to do flame fetterer twice, you actually just get it every single time you go into flame fetter or when the duration status is extended. So remember that one of our codes actually does extend flame fetterer as an addition as well. So on top of that though, if you actually do end up using the ability, so the fire warp, it does a massive amount of damage. That's 660%, which I think is 3 times what the normal one is. And then you also get a small AoE, and then 12 energies also granted, and enemies hit have their own fire resistance lowered by 2.4% for 8 seconds. So again, fire resistance lowered, and then you're able to get energy back. So she's pretty much a good machine. So this one actually works for a couple different reasons though. So this works for the yellow path, which is going to be your energy like consumption. You're just going to get a ton of energy, so this does work for that, but it also works for just kind of enhancing the flame fetterer. So basically every single time you go into it, if it's extended, all that different stuff, you just do a massive amount of damage. This is kind of a catch-22. I would say honestly though, it's probably better to go with the enhanced flame fetterer just because it does a ton of massive damage. But if you want to kind of conserve some of that energy as well, you can do that. So, but the other thing here is it also stacks up to 5 times, so you can just continuously keep doing it up to 5 times, and you just do a massive amount of damage. And her AoE is also really good too. So each time a hit is landed during a normal attack, the damage dealt with the flame warp attack is also increased by 2.4%. Damage is also removed each time flame fetterer ends. So again, it ends at the end of it, but if you keep extending it and you keep using your skills and you have the kind of extended duration, this can go on for a pretty long time, stacking bonuses and all different things. So take a look at these signature functors because they really do help out units, and they can be mostly ground changing for a lot of the different units that I've seen. So overall, that's just kind of what I recommend for her. She has a ton of different things that you can do, all kinds of different options and choices and stuff like that. But if you like these type of videos and you want to see more on different characters, definitely let me know, and I'll see you in the next one. Have a good rest of your night, guys. Peace.